So my name is Sarah Pick and I'm a beef specialist working for AHDB Beef and Lamb. So this afternoon we have Sarah Thomson from Moredun Research Institute who'll be talking about cryptosporidiosis in calves. Sarah split the subject into two topics. The first one is cryptosporidiosis in calves and the second is control of cryptosporidiosis. So she'll talk for about 15 minutes on each topic and then there'll be a gap between each session so that you can ask any questions. Questions can be submitted by emailing brpconf@ahdb.org.uk and I will put your questions to the speaker. We've also produced some summary sheets called expert view sheets of the information presented today, and those are available by emailing brpconf@ahdb.org.uk. So Sarah Thomson graduated from SRUC with a BSc in Applied Bioscience. She then spent some time working on farms and ranches in New Zealand and Canada before returning to the UK. Sarah then went to do a Master's by Research in Molecular Parasitology at the University of Glasgow and graduated in 2010. Sarah has a PhD on cryptosporidiosis in farm livestock, which she did at the Moredun Research Institute. She is currently employed as a postdoctoral scientist at the Moredun Research Institute, investigating the host responses to Cryptosporidium infection in 1 week and 6-week-old calves. So she should know her stuff about cryptosporidiosis. So just a bit of background. Cryptosporidiosis is one of the most common causes of calf scour in the UK. It's caused by the parasite called Cryptosporidium and is usually seen in young calves less than 6 weeks old. Few cases of pure cryptosporidiosis result in mortality. However, it can take the calf 4 to 6 weeks to recover from the disease, which can result in weight loss or reduced weight gains. So, without further ado, I'll pass over to Sarah. Thank you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. So thanks very much for my introduction, Sarah. So I'll just I'll just get started. So as Sarah's already said, cryptosporidiosis is the disease caused by the parasite Cryptosporidium. It's a parasite that's found worldwide. There are lots and lots of different species of Cryptosporidium. There are over 30 species, but fortunately not all of them cause disease. There are only 4 which are commonly found in cattle, and I'll talk just a little bit more about them in a few minutes. So, as you probably know, in calves, the clinical signs of cryptosporidiosis include scour, so profuse watery diarrhoea, dehydration from the diarrhoea, loss of appetite, weight loss, abdominal pain, fever, and in severe cases where the animal is immunocompromised or commonly is infected with another pathogen at the same time, death can occur. So the most important Cryptosporidium species for us and for you as farmers and producers is Cryptosporidium parvum. This is the species which is most commonly found in young calves, lambs and other livestock species. So there tends to be a age-related distribution of the Cryptosporidium species. And what we tend to find is that young calves up to 2 months of age are most commonly infected with C. parvum. This species can also infect humans, so it's quite an important pathogen in terms of human health as well. So this is the one that causes the clinical signs of diarrhoea, appetite, loss of appetite and fever. In slightly older cattle, sort of 2 to 11 months, the most common species of Cryptosporidium are called C. bovis and C. ryani, and at present these species have not been associated with any clinical disease. Although that doesn't mean that it doesn't cause anything, but this doesn't cause scour in this age group of calves, although there may be some production effects that we don't know about yet. Adult cattle tend to be infected with a species called C. andersoni. This has been associated with mild clinical signs such as reduced weight gain and reduced milk yield. Also, recent research at Moredun has found that actually calves in the sort of 2 to 11 months and adult cattle can be infected with C. parvum, but it doesn't cause clinical scour in this age group. Another thing to complicate Cryptosporidium is that, as well as the different species, there are several different strains within the species. So we've found that with C. parvum, there are different strains or genotypes of this species which can be associated with different disease symptoms. So some C. parvum strains will cause more severe diarrhoea in infected calves than other species will. So is it a problem in the UK? Yes, most definitely. Cryptosporidiosis is the main cause of neonatal enteritis in calves in the UK and has been for the past at least 10 years. It's always higher than rotavirus, coronavirus, E. coli, anything else that causes scour in calves. We've had reports from certain areas in the UK of huge calf losses as a result of cryptosporidiosis. So some farmers in the northeast of Scotland had reported losses of up to 30% of calves, which is obviously quite a large number. And on other farms, losses of 10% of their calves. We don't really know how much cryptosporidiosis costs in terms of treatment and things, but research from SAC has sort of estimated it to be about £44 per sick calf. This is just for scour, not cryptosporidiosis specifically. So one of the main problems with Cryptosporidium is that the oocysts are very stubborn and can survive in the environment for a long time. So they're resistant to the commonly used disinfectants that you may use on your farm, such as FAM or Sorgine, which is unfortunate. They're also very resistant to heat, so they can survive in temperatures up to 60 degrees, which doesn't often occur on the farm, even when you're steam cleaning, and cold down to -20. So even a long cold spell, which may kill off some other pathogens, has no effect on Cryptosporidium. The parasite can survive for several years in cool, moist environments, which can often be found in like your calving shed or in fields. It's also very easy to spread the parasite because there's a very low infectious dose, and this means that the infection can spread quite rapidly through the farm or groups of calves. As few as 10 oocysts can cause disease, and this means that infected animals can then shed billions of infective oocysts. So the oocysts are like sort of the egg form of the parasite. So how do 10 oocysts turn into billions of oocysts? Well, first of all, the infective oocysts or eggs are ingested by the calf, and then once inside the gut, in the presence of the acid and the 37-degree temperature, the oocyst sort of hatches and releases 4 little sporozoites. So these sporozoites then invade the gut lining of the calf, and in doing so they damage the gut, and this is why the calves end up with scour, because they're no longer able to absorb any nutrients or anything from the milk. And each of these little sporozoites develops into an infective oocyst. Some of the oocysts remain inside the gut and reinfect the calf, while other oocysts develop a hard shell and are passed out in the faeces, where they then are available for other susceptible hosts to become infected. So there are various different transmission routes for crypto, like how do calves become infected in the first place. So the cryptoocysts can be carried in drinking water. They are resistant to normal disinfection procedures for water, so they are resistant to chlorination. UV is effective in controlling crypto, but I think it's quite difficult to get the sort of intensity of UV required. We have other livestock could be a source of infection for calves, because crypto C. parvum can be carried by most livestock species, in fact most species of anything. Also wildlife, so such as deer. We've also got some evidence that maybe some rodents or mice can carry, or birds can carry C. parvum. There's also the environment. As I said, these oocysts can survive a long period of time in the environment. So even if you've pressure washed and cleaned out your pen, there may still be some oocysts. And if only 10 are enough to cause infection, then this is how the first calf can become infected. We've also, we're starting to look at whether calves can get crypto from their mothers, because it was originally thought that adult cattle didn't shed C. parvum, which is the species that causes disease in calves. But some new research at Moredun, which was funded by the AHDB actually, has shown that the adult cattle can carry C. parvum. So it's possible that maybe their dams could pass it on to the young calves. The other possibility, of course, is anyone who's handling the calf, such as you. You could carry some oocysts from somewhere else on your farm or elsewhere into your pen with your young calves and infect them. Sorry, excuse me. One thing that we notice on farms when we study them over a long period of time is that the prevalence of Cryptosporidium infection increases as calving goes on. So, for one example, one farm we studied in March, at the beginning of calving, about 30% of their calves were positive for Cryptosporidium. By the end of calving in May, over 95% of the calves tested positive for Cryptosporidium. So not all of the calves on this farm were clinically affected by Cryptosporidium, so that means that they didn't actually have scour, but they were still carrying Cryptosporidium. So this just sort of demonstrates that as calving goes on, you have a build-up of oocysts in the environment, which means that later born calves are more likely to pick up the infection. Which is, we'll talk about this in the control section, but it's important to muck out and disinfect pens in between calving. One thing that's very important for crypto, if you have it in your calves, is that if you suspect you have crypto, it's very important to get accurate diagnosis. Because there are several things that can cause scour in calves, and most of them you can treat. With Cryptosporidium, it's very difficult to treat the calf. We'll talk about this in control as well, but really your only options for treating a calf infected with Cryptosporidium is rehydration and just keeping it hydrated until it passes the infection itself. So, to get an accurate diagnosis, it's very important to contact your vet and have the scour sample sent away and tested. So it can be tested using a variety of different kits, and also very important to look at the farm history and things on your farm. If you've had crypto before, it's more likely that you will have it again. So I think that's sort of me covered the first part of the talk with Cryptosporidium in calves.
Lovely. Thank you, Sarah. That was very well explained. Whilst I just wait for the questions to come in, I'd just like to remind everyone that AHDB Beef and Lamb and AHDB Dairy recently hosted a webinar on cryptosporidiosis, which is available to watch and listen again on the AHDB Dairy YouTube channel. So just while I have a look at questions, the first one that's come in is, can cryptosporidiosis infect other livestock? So, for example, if newborn lambs are present on the farm at the same time as calves?
Yes, it can. Because Cryptosporidium can infect like a wide host range, which is most livestock species. If you have newborn lambs, then yes, this would be a risk to them as well. And in fact, lambs can become more severely infected than calves. I know this is about calves, but because lambs are smaller and more likely to become dehydrated quicker, then it can be harder to sort of keep them as hydrated as you need to and get them through it.
Are they affected at a very young age as well?
Yes, so crypto mostly affects animals in sort of the first 2 to 3 weeks of life.
Right. Okay.
So when they've got no immunity built up at all, that's when they become infected.
Lovely, thank you for that. The next question, can Cryptosporidiosis live in the calving shed or field, and for how long?
Yes, that's another yes to that question. Crypto can survive very well in the environment. Because it's got such a hard outer shell, it's very difficult to break into it, to sort of kill it. It's resistant to most disinfectants, although in the control section I'll be able to give a list of some disinfectants that are effective for crypto. And yes, as I said earlier, the steam cleaning, is quite difficult because the oocyst is resistant up to 60 degrees, and even by the time you water. Oh, sorry.
Right, and what about frost then? Can they kill oocytes, or are they quite resistant to low temperatures?
Yes, they're very resistant to low temperatures.
Right.
So maybe in 2010, when we had some temperatures down to -10, I think, we may have killed off some cryptoocysts, but we know that they're resistant down to -20 and they can still be infective. So it's obviously very rare in this country for the temperature to go that cold.
So for how long can they live in the environment?
They can survive up to sort of 1 to 2 years in the environment, although they will become sort of less viable. So that means that not as many of them will actually be infective. Okay. But since we only need 10, and they are tiny oocysts. Yeah. So we won't even if they're not viable, because one calf can shed billions of oocysts in a week or so.
So how do the symptoms of cryptosporidiosis vary from other types of calf scour, such as rotavirus and coccidiosis?
Well, cryptosporidiosis, I think, tends to occur sort of slightly earlier than these other pathogens will affect calves. It's also, it's a very, very watery diarrhea that they get, and there's usually no blood in it, because with some of the other pathogens it causes a bloody diarrhea, whereas cryptosporidiosis is normally bright yellow, very watery. It has a particular smell, but unless you work with crypto every day, then you probably don't recognise the crypto smell. So.
Oh dear. And just the final question that's come in. What are the long-term effects of crypto infection?
In terms of growth and things, we don't actually know what the long-term effects of crypto are as yet, because it's very hard to sort of figure this all out. But actually, at the moment, we have a PhD student at Moredun who's funded by the AHDB, and as part of her project, she's looking at the long-term effects of early infection with crypto on calves. So she's following calves from birth, see if they become infected with crypto, and following them right through to slaughter to see if there's a difference in carcass weight and quality, and whether that has been affected by early cryptosporidiosis.
Oh, brilliant. The results of that will be very interesting.
Yeah, well, because nothing like that has ever been done before, so we really don't know what the long-term impacts are, but we, from going onto farms, we can see that calves that are severely affected do seem to be smaller and take longer to catch up with their peers. So
seems to be
hopefully.
Doers. Yeah. Lovely. Thanks for that, Sarah. So if you'd like to go on to part 2, that would be great.
Okay, that's perfect. So part 2 is on control, which is probably what you are most interested in. What can you actually do about cryptosporidiosis? Because it seems quite bleak. Cryptosporidium is very good at surviving in the environment. It passes through calves very rapidly. So is there anything that you can actually do? So first of all, we'll go through some treatment options, which are quite dire. So there are no vaccines available to prevent the disease, unfortunately. And in the UK, there is only one licensed product for treatment of calves, and this is Halicure. So Halicure, when given to calves, can reduce the scour and the shedding of oocysts, but it doesn't completely cure the animal of the disease. It also comes with some sort of problems with use, because it has to be used for 7 consecutive days from birth, which means it can be quite time consuming to give it to calves. If you have beef calves that are outside, it's obviously impossible to give them Halicure for 7 consecutive days. It also has quite a sort of low range of... you have to weigh your calves very accurately before you dose them, because if you overdose them, it causes scour, which is obviously what we're trying to prevent. So, as I've said already, the oocysts are very stable in the environment and can survive for many years in the buildings and other surroundings. One thing that's quite interesting, as part of my PhD, I visited some farms up in the northeast of Scotland that all had crypto problems. Then 1 year into the 3 years I visited, and all of the farms had a massive reduction in the crypto. They all had one thing in common. They'd all had a new shed put up. So it seems that one of the main ways for controlling crypto is to build a new shed each year, which is obviously not very practical. But it just demonstrates that the oocysts do survive in the environment, and that might be where the calves get it from. So the other thing that's important is that older animals can carry crypto, even though they don't become infected. So you won't see any clinical signs of scour in older animals, but they could be shedding oocysts into the environment while they don't appear infected themselves. So yes, as I've said, we've already found out from research here at Moredun that older calves and adult cattle can shed C. parvum. So that's why it's very important not to mix age groups of calves. So try and keep sort of strict age groups of calves and don't put younger calves in older calf pens or whatever. So there are some effective solutions to reduce Cryptosporidium on farm. This mainly sort of focuses around trying to reduce the number of oocysts that are in the environment, so reducing the environmental contamination, making it less likely for calves to pick up the infection. So the first one is to steam clean animal pens and calving areas. So although the oocysts are resistant to temperatures of up to 60 degrees, if you pressure wash and steam clean very carefully, the temperature of the water when it hits the wall should still be at sort of a high enough temperature to kill the oocysts. And even if it isn't, the simple process of cleaning the calving areas frequently means that you physically remove the oocysts from the pens, so from the walls or the floor of the pens, or the gates that you use at the hurdles in the pens. So just trying to reduce the number of oocysts in the environment. The other thing that's the only thing that crypto is really susceptible to is drying out. So the best practice is to sort of try and pressure wash or steam clean your walls and then leave them to dry out before bedding them again, because the heat then drying them out should hopefully kill off some of the oocysts. Also making sure that while the calves or animals are in pens is deep regular straw bedding, which means you're keeping your animals away from the faeces. So one thing that does kill oocysts is ammonia. So if you've got a deep bed with urea from the urine in the bedding, then that will help kill the oocysts, while you can have deep bedded straw on top to keep the animals away from the poo. You should also make sure that slurry and manure should be well fermented before you put it onto your fields. We don't really know how long the oocysts can survive in the muck heap or in the slurry, because that's quite a hard thing to establish. But we do suspect that some viable oocysts, if it's not been left for long enough and reach high enough temperatures or in contact with ammonia for long enough, that you could pass the viable oocysts onto the pasture, where calves could then pick that up from there. The other thing which you'll hear for lots and lots of diseases that's very important is animal management. The first one is colostrum. So this is where your calf receives food, fluids and antibodies. So at birth, as you'll know, calves have very poorly developed immune systems, and they rely on receiving maternal antibodies in the colostrum to provide protection from diseases. And an estimated 50% of calves in the UK don't actually get enough colostrum at birth for maximum protection. So even if your cows haven't been exposed to crypto, just the sort of general antibodies present in the colostrum will help to protect your calves against diseases. So to improve calf health, we've got the 3 Qs of colostrum, which you will all know. So as soon as possible after birth, and within 6 hours, you want to be giving your calves your colostrum, so that's quickness. Then you've got your quality, which you'll know varies with the age of the cow So heifers have poorer quality colostrum than cows do, and and breed as well. So the antibody content can range from 2 to 15%. The other thing is the quantity. Calves should receive at least 4 litres within an hour of birth, with another sort of 2 to 3 litres within the next 6 hours. So if you've got a calf that's suckling, to receive 4 litres, that should take approximately 20 minutes. So that's the first thing you can do for your calves, is to try and give them the best start by making sure they receive adequate, good quality colostrum. If your calves do become sick with crypto, the only thing you can really do for them is to keep them rehydrated, so with electrolyte solution. Also to keep the scouring calves away from your other healthy calves, ideally for at least 1 week until scouring stops. This is because that even when 1 week after scouring stops, because calves can shed oocysts after they've been infected, even when they're not showing clinical signs of disease, which means if you put them back in the pen too soon, then they could potentially infect other calves. Keep your animals in strict age groups, so don't mix your older animals with younger animals, and also make sure to feed healthy animals first before you handle any sick calves. So, this is a bit that everybody is always interested in, which disinfectants are effective to control crypto. So like I said already, most of the commonly used disinfectants like FAM and Sorgine are not effective against Cryptosporidium, but I've got some here which are. They're also on the summary sheets that Sarah had talked about earlier, so you can request those if you want a list. But we've got a disinfectant called Kenocox, which will kill oocysts after 2 hours contact time. Neopredisan, which also will kill oocysts after 2 hours of contact time. Oxferin, which only reduces infectivity after 1 hour. The other thing, this is what we use in the lab, is hydrogen peroxide. We use 3.3% hydrogen peroxide, and this reduces infectivity after 4 minutes. And the most recent disinfectant, which has claimed efficacy against Cryptosporidium, is Coxicure. So I'm not sure where all of these are available, but we do know that some farmers we've spoken to are now able to get these through their farm suppliers. But I must point out that it's very important that you read and follow the safety instructions provided with these disinfectants before you use them. The other thing you can do for calves is to control mixed infections. So quite often cryptosporidiosis in calves is made worse by a mixed infection with the other pathogens which can cause enteritis, such as rotavirus, coronavirus, E. coli or Eimeria. So if you can control these pathogens, then you can reduce the impact of disease, even though you won't stop your calves getting Cryptosporidium. So the ways of doing this is to vaccinate dams prior to calving with one of the vaccines to control rotavirus, coronavirus and E. coli. But this only applies if your calves receive adequate colostrum, because the antibodies which protect the calves are passed in the colostrum. The other thing which can help reduce diarrhoea caused by Eimeria is the feeding of decox. And I know some farmers have reported that they find this very effective. So if you can control the mixed infections, you can reduce the impact of the disease. And again, I'll say that it's very important to make sure your disease is accurately diagnosed. So you want to know what you're dealing with. If your calves have got scour, make sure you get it test it, because you may have something that you can treat, and then you can treat it accordingly, rather than assuming it's Cryptosporidium, which you can't really do very much about in terms of treatment for the calf. So, just in summary for your on-farm control, before calving, you want to start thinking about health plans with your vet, so controlling pathogens which cause calf scour in dams by vaccinating them, and also making sure that the nutrition for your dams is very good, which will help maximise the quality and quantity of the colostrum. Make sure the calf sheds are cleaned out thoroughly using steam leaving to dry, and also make sure you use one of the effective disinfectants and bed the calving shed or calving pens with deep straw beds. During calving, make sure you apply the 3 Qs of colostrum, giving your calves good quality colostrum in a timely manner. Make sure you age group your calves, keeping neonatal calves separate from older ones. As your calving progresses, make sure that you keep the sheds clean. So for best results, make sure you muck out, disinfect and use plenty of straw at regular intervals over the calving period. And remember that the only licensed product for prevention and treatment of cryptosporidiosis for calves in the UK is Halicure. So I think that's me covered the control section, if there are any questions.
Lovely. Thanks for that, Sarah. So it shows how important hygiene and calf grouping are when controlling cryptosporidiosis on farm. So whilst I wait for some questions to come in, I would just like to promote a couple of events which are coming up. The first is the Beef from Grass project events. So these are held at the Improver Farms, who are part of these projects looking to improve their grassland management. So these events are held on the 12th of May in Shropshire, the 19th of May in Somerset, and the 26th of May in Northamptonshire, and the final event is held on the 1st of June in Dartmoor. We've also some workshops coming up looking at feed planning. These are being held on the 19th of May at Stafford, the 15th of May at Northumberland, and the 26th of May at Wetherby. So it looks like May is going to be a very busy month. You can find more details about these events on the website beefandlamb.ahdb.org.uk. Bookings can be made by phoning the Beef and Lamb Events Office on 01904 771211 or emailing the events team, which is brp.events.ahdb.org.uk. So just some final questions that have come in. Can antibiotics be used to control cryptosporidiosis?
No. That's very important to make sure that you speak to your vet before using antibiotics, because you cannot control Cryptosporidium using antibiotics, and the use of antibiotics where for pathogens like parasites is not recommended, and that's the kind of thing that ends up leading to the build-up of antibiotic resistance, and meaning that we can't use antibiotics to treat pathogens that they are effective against. Okay. So, like I said, the only treatment available... No. Sorry?
That's a definite no.
Yeah, definite no.
Lovely. Thank you. So if a farm's had a lot of cryptosporidiosis in 1 year, will it happen in subsequent years?
Yes, I think it's quite common for farms to sort of have bad crypto and then have it again. But if you try and sort of follow all of the advice that we've given in terms of cleaning out your pens and using appropriate disinfectants, then it is possible to reduce the impact of crypto or the instance of crypto on the farms. Because quite often we will go back to farms that have had a problem and they have sort of managed to reduce the crypto. Yeah. But it is hard to get rid of once you have it. So it's sort of prevention is better than cure.
Yeah. And do you think a vaccine will be made available in the future?
Well, we are hoping that eventually we will be able to do that, something like that. But at the moment, we actually don't understand very much about how the animal's immune response responds to a crypto infection. So that's the kind of thing I'm working on just now, is just the sort of general knowledge building of the things that we don't understand, in the hope that maybe we'll be able to develop something in the future which would help with control measures. Because we do know that older calves or livestock don't become infected with crypto. Right. So we want to see what the difference in those compared to the younger calves is, and then we might be able to develop some control measures which will be effective and maybe sort of lead to a vaccine. But it's one of those things that is we don't know yet, and a long time down the line.
Lovely. you said that adult cattle can often act as carriers for the pathogen.
Yeah.
So in suckler herds, is it likely that the cow will pass the oocytes to her calf?
Well, it's possible. So we've only studied this so far in dairy calves, purely because it's easier to access dairy calves, obviously, and their dams than it is to collect from the same beef calf over time, because they tend to be outside with their very protective mothers. Meaning it's very difficult to collect fecal samples from them. But yes, we do think it might be possible. Although on one of the farms we've studied so far, the cows, although they were shedding C. parvum, it was a different type of C. parvum to the one that the calves were infected with. But it may be possible that the cows are shedding different types, but one type is more sort of suited to the calf gut, so we only detect it in the calves. It doesn't mean the calves don't have another one. So we are now thinking that yes, maybe adult cows could be a potential source, which is obviously complicates matters for suckler herds, because it's not possible to keep your dams away from your calves. But that should help, that if cows have been exposed to Cryptosporidium, then they should have some antibodies in the colostrum, which may help protect the calves. So in that case, it's also, again, very important to make sure the colostrum management is spot on. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. And just one final question that's come in. Once you've had crypto on your farm, is it possible to get rid of it?
Yes, it is possible to get rid of it, but it will take a lot of work and perseverance in terms of making sure you're on top of hygiene measures, making sure that you treat for diseases that you can control, because Cryptosporidiosis is normally made worse by these mixed infections with rotavirus or coronavirus or E. coli. So, like I said, yes, if you can stop or control those pathogens, then you can help reduce the crypto. So it's very important that while we have control measures for these other pathogens, that we use them. And yes, with doing that and making sure that calving pens and calf areas are well cleaned out between calvings and regularly disinfected during calving, then that can help to reduce crypto, and you should be able to get rid of it eventually.
Lovely, thank you. So just a reminder to everyone that you can request the expert view sheet, which Sarah has prepared, by emailing brpconf@ahdb.org.uk. And finally, I'd just like to flag up our Beef Feeding Club e-newsletter. So this is sent out bi-monthly and aims to provide farmers with the latest news and interesting information about feeding cattle. Please let us have your email address if you would like to receive this. Email brp@ahdb.org.uk and ask to subscribe. So it doesn't look like there are any more questions. Excuse me. So I'd like to bring the teleconference to a close. I would just like to thank Sarah for her very informative teleconference today, and I hope the listeners found it both interesting and informative. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.